In the scorched heart of the Arizona desert, where the sun beat down like the drum of an ancient war chant, stood the colossal figure of Xochitl, the giant Apache goddess. Towering over the saguaro cacti and red rock mesas, her form was a living monument to the spirits of her ancestors, bronze skin etched with the scars of forgotten battles, eyes like polished obsidian that pierced the soul of any who dared approach. She was no myth whispered around campfires, she was real, a guardian woven from the earth's fury and the wind's whisper. Legends said she had risen from the sacred mountains during a time when colonizers' greed threatened to swallow the land whole, vowing to protect her people with a fierceness unmatched. "I never lose to any man," she would thunder, her voice echoing like thunder across the canyons, shaking the ground beneath the feet of those who sought to conquer. Men, warriors, miners, even modern developers with their machines of steel had come and gone, humbled or broken by her unyielding will. She wrestled grizzlies with bare hands, outran the swiftest stallions, and with a single glare, turned armies back from the borders of her domain. Yet beneath that iron resolve lay a solitude as vast as the desert itself, a heart armored not just against foes, but against the vulnerability of connection. Xochitl's days blurred into an eternal vigil. She roamed the canyons at dawn, her footsteps carving shallow rivers in the parched earth, tending to the hidden oases where wildflowers bloomed defiantly against the heat. The Apache elders, her distant kin, left offerings at the base of her pedestal, a jagged outcrop where she often perched like a sentinel eagle. Feathers from the golden eagle, turquoise beads strung on sinew, and stories etched on deerskin scrolls. They revered her as the embodiment of strength, a reminder that the land's spirit could not be tamed. But Xochitl felt the weight of it all. Centuries had passed since her awakening, and with each passing moon, the world grew smaller, more crowded with strangers who saw her not as a protector, but as an obstacle. "Why must I stand alone?" she murmured to the stars one night, her voice a rare softness lost in the vast silence. She had faced down cavalry charges, outwitted prospectors with their dynamite dreams, and even stared down a helicopter's whirring blades in recent years. Yet victory tasted like ash. Her declaration, "I never lose to any man," was both shield and shackle, a vow that kept enemies at bay but locked away the possibility of alliance, of tenderness. It was on a blistering afternoon in the summer of 2025, when the air shimmered with heat mirages, that the stranger appeared. He was no ordinary wanderer. Elias was a lanky figure in faded jeans and a threadbare flannel shirt, his skin weathered by years under the same relentless sun. A Navajo Hopi artist turned itinerant healer, he carried a battered guitar slung over his shoulder and a satchel filled with herbs, sketchpads, and the quiet burdens of a man who'd lost too much. Elias had come to the desert not to conquer, but to mourn. His wife, Lena, had passed the winter before from a sudden illness, leaving him with a daughter, little Maya, whose laughter now echoed hollow in their adobe home back in Window Rock. The doctors had called it cancer, but Elias knew it was the poison of a fractured world, stress from endless bills, polluted waters from old mining scars, and the slow erosion of traditions under the weight of progress. "Heal the land, heal the heart," Lena had whispered in her final days, pressing a silver concho belt into his hands. So Elias wandered, seeking solace in the earth's ancient songs, drawing maps of forgotten trails in charcoal and singing lullabies to the wind. He first spotted Xochitl from afar, her silhouette a thunderhead against the horizon. Legends of the giant goddess had reached even the trading posts in Gallup, tales of a spirit who crushed the egos of the mighty. Elias paused, wiping sweat from his brow, his boots kicking up dust devils that danced like playful spirits. He wasn't here to challenge her, no, he sought only a quiet place to sketch the layered reds of the canyons, to let his grief bleed onto paper. But as he crested a ridge, their eyes met. Xochitl rose from her perch, her shadow engulfing him like a sudden eclipse. "Turn back, little one," she boomed, her voice a rumble that stirred the pebbles at his feet. "This is no place for mortals who chase shadows." Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head, a faint smile cracking his sun-chapped lips. "Shadows? Ma'am, I'm just trying to catch the light before it fades." His words hung in the air, simple and unadorned, carrying no threat, no demand. Xochitl narrowed her eyes, searching for the familiar glint of arrogance in men who'd come before, the miners with their picks, the filmmakers with their cameras, the politicians with their empty promises. But in Elias, she saw only weariness, etched deep like the arroyos carved by flash floods. For days, Elias lingered at the edge of her domain, respecting the invisible line she drew with her gaze. He set up a modest camp under a lone mesquite tree, its twisted branches offering scant shade. By firelight, he strummed his guitar, melodies weaving through the night. Old Navajo chants blended with blues picked up from juke joints in Tulsa. Xochitl watched from afar, her massive form blending into the cliffs. Curiosity, that rare intruder, began to gnaw at her resolve. Who was this man who didn't charge forward, didn't bargain or beg? One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in strokes of crimson and gold, Elias unpacked his satchel. He ground sage and cedar into a paste, mixing it with water from his canteen to form a bomb. Then, with deliberate care, he approached the boundary. Not to cross it, but to call out. "Goddess," he said, his voice steady as the horizon, "I've got something for the burns. The sun here's fiercer than a devil's kiss. Even giants feel it, I reckon." He held up the small clay pot, the scent of healing herbs wafting on the breeze. Xochitl laughed, then a deep, earth-shaking bellow that sent a flock of ravens scattering. "You think to heal me, stranger? I am the storm, the unyielding rock. Men have tried with their medicines and their machines, and all have failed." But as she spoke, she felt a twinge in her side, a remnant from a recent skirmish with a band of off-road enthusiasts who'd torn up a sacred trail. The wound was minor to her, but the offer, it was kindness without conquest. Elias shrugged, setting the pot down just inside her line. "No trying about it. Just offering. The land gives, we give back. That's the way." He retreated without another word, leaving the pot glinting in the moonlight. That night, as Xochitl applied the balm, the coolness seeped into her skin like a forgotten rain. It eased the ache, but more than that, it stirred something deeper, a crack in the armor she'd forged so long ago. As weeks unfolded, Elias's presence became a quiet rhythm in Xochitl's eternal watch. He sketched her from a distance, capturing not her ferocity, but the subtle grace in how she cradled a wounded javelina to safety, or the way her fingers, each the size of a man's arm, gently parted the sands to reveal hidden springs for thirsting coyotes. One dawn, a sudden storm rolled in from the west, black clouds birthing lightning that clawed the sky. Elias, caught unprepared, scrambled for shelter as flash floods roared down the washes. Xochitl saw him falter, his foot slipping on slick rock, the current tugging at his legs like greedy hands. Without thought, she surged forward, her hand vast as a boulder, scooping him from the torrent and depositing him on high ground. "Foolish man," she growled, water streaming from her like rivers from a mountain. "You tempt the spirits with your carelessness." Dripping and breathless, Elias looked up at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you. But it wasn't carelessness. I was listening to the rain song. Sometimes, you gotta dance in the storm to hear it clear." In that moment, an unexpected turn unfurled. Xochitl, who had never been to any man, felt a pull not of defeat, but of kinship. She sat, her form causing the earth to groan, beside his camp, the first time she'd crossed her own boundary. "What song does the rain sing to you?" she asked, her voice softer than the thunder's echo. Elias picked up his guitar, fingers dancing over strings still damp. He played a tune of loss and renewal, lyrics weaving tales of Lena's gentle hands planting corn in barren soil, of Maya's first steps across red earth. "It's about holding on," he said, "even when the flood takes everything. Kindness isn't weakness, it's the root that keeps the tree standing." Xochitl listened, her obsidian eyes reflecting the fire's glow. For the first time in centuries, she shared her own story, not of battles won, but of the loneliness that followed. The men she'd bested saw her as a prize or a peril, never a soul adrift in her own vastness. As the notes faded, Elias reached into his satchel and pulled out a small sketch, her face, not as a giant, but as a woman with eyes full of quiet storms. "You're more than the legend," he said. "You're the heart of it." Their conversations bloomed like desert wildflowers after rain, sporadic at first, then a daily communion. Elias taught her the blues, how sorrow could bend into beauty through strings and voice. In return, Xochitl shared Apache lore, the stories of changing woman who wove the world from threads of dawn and dusk. But doubt lingered in her heart. "I vowed never to lose to any man," she confessed one twilight, as they watched the sun surrender to the horizon. "What if yielding to this warmth, makes me weak?" Elias shook his head, his smile a beacon. "It's not losing, Xochitl. It's finding. We've both guarded too much, me my grief, you your solitude. Elias's breath came in ragged gasps, his face pale against the crimson earth. Xochitl's hands trembled, hands that had felled oaks and redirected rivers, now gentle as a mother's touch, pressing his wound with a scrap of his flannel. "Stay with me," she urged, her voice cracking like dry clay underfoot. The developers fled, their machines abandoned in the dust, but victory tasted bitter as gall. This was no foe to conquer. This was the man who'd slipped past her defenses with stories and songs, who'd seen her not as a goddess on a pedestal, but as Xochitl, weary warrior of the wilds. She carried him to her sacred oasis, a hidden grotto where palm fronds arched like a cathedral ceiling, and clear waters bubbled from stone lips. Laying him on a bed of soft moss, she crushed yarrow and comfrey from the banks, mixing the poultice with tears she hadn't shed in ages. "You can't leave," she murmured, applying the herbs. "Not when I've just begun to win at being human." Miles away, in the dim glow of a hospital room in Flagstaff, little Maya clutched her father's silver concho belt, her 7-year-old eyes wide with the doctor's grave words. "He's strong, Mija," her grandmother soothed, but doubt shadowed the room like gathering dusk. Maya, with her mother's dark curls and her father's quiet fire, had heard the legends of the giant goddess from elders' tales. "Papa's with the spirits now," she whispered, fingering the belt's intricate engravings of thunderbirds and stars. "Maybe the giant lady can help. She never loses." The idea took root, a child's unshakable faith. That night, as stars wheeled overhead, Maya slipped from the room, boarding a Greyhound bus with nothing but the belt, a sketchpad of her father's, and a fierce determination born of love. Back in the grotto, Elias stirred under Xochitl's vigil. Fever burned through him, dreams feverish with visions of Lena laughing in sunflower fields, of canyons blooming eternal. "Xochitl," he rasped, eyes fluttering open to her immense form hunched protectively. "The developers, they'll come back." She shook her head, brushing damp hair from his brow with a finger as delicate as a reed. "Let them. I'll stand as always." But her words faltered, the old fire felt dimmed, eclipsed by fear. Elias gripped her hand, his small against her vast. "No more standing alone. Remember the song, The Root in the Storm. Fight with heart, not just fists." His words pierced her, a profound realization dawning. Her vow had been a cage, forged in pain to shield her people, but it blinded her to allies, to the selfless bonds that wove humanity's true strength. In Elias, she'd glimpsed that weave kindness as the thread, selflessness the loom. As Elias mended, their bond deepened in the grotto's emerald hush. He taught her to weave baskets from willow, his fingers guiding hers in intricate patterns that told stories of migration and return. "See? Strengthen the bend, not the break," he said, as she fumbled a reed, her laughter booming like joyful thunder. Xochitl shared the vulnerability she'd buried, born not fully divine, but from a mortal Apache woman's prayer during a raid, the spirits granting her size and power at the cost of isolation. "I thought losing to a man meant losing myself," she confessed, eyes on the rippling pool. "But you make me want to risk it." Elias's gaze softened, mirroring the water's calm. "Love isn't loss, Xochitl. It's the flood that carves new paths." The unexpected turn came with Maya's arrival. The child, dusty and defiant, stumbled into the canyon guided by instincts sharper than any map. "Papa," she cried, spotting the camp. Xochitl, sensing the small heartbeat approaching, rose like a protective mesa. But Maya didn't cower, she held up the concho belt, its silver catching the sun. "The giant lady. You gotta save him. He draws you pretty, like a queen." Elias, hearing the voice, struggled to sit, tears tracing paths down his cheeks. "Maya, how?" The reunion was a torrent, arms wrapping, sobs mingling with giggles, the grotto alive with the raw pulse of family. Xochitl watched, a giantess undone by a child's trust, her heart swelling until it ached. Here was humanity's power, not in conquest, but in connection, the selfless love that bridged divides of size and story. Word of the miracle in the canyon spread like wildfire through Navajo Nation networks and beyond. Tweets from activists, posts on indigenous forums, even a viral video of Maya sketching Xochitl's hand cradling her father. The developers returned, not with bulldozers, but with humbled offers, partnerships for sustainable trails, funds for healing centers drawing on traditional knowledge. But the true climax brewed in the heart of the storm. As Elias recovered fully, a council gathered elders from Apache, Navajo, Hopi bands, even urban activists from Phoenix and LA. Tensions simmered, old wounds from land grabs festered. Xochitl, once the lone sentinel, now stood among them, Elias at her side, Maya perched on her shoulder like a tiny eagle. The turning point came when the lead developer, chastened, proposed a resort that would displace sacred sites. Murmurs of anger rose. Xochitl's fists clenched, her vow thundering in her chest. But then, Elias stepped forward, his voice steady. We've all lost land, loved ones, pieces of ourselves. But what if we build together? Not on your terms, but ours. He unveiled sketches, not of hotels, but of eco-villages where artists healed the soil, where children like Maya learned songs of the ancestors. Maya added her touch, drawing hearts around the plans. In that act of generosity, Elias offering his grief-forged visions, Maya her innocent hope, something shattered within Xochitl. She knelt, her massive frame bowing low, and extended a hand to the developer. No more taking. Join us in giving back. The man, tears in his eyes, clasped it, a mortal pact sealed by a goddess's grace. Cheers erupted, the canyon walls amplifying the harmony of healed divides. As the sun set on that transformative day, Xochitl and Elias walked the mesa's edge, Maya skipping between them, her laughter a bridge across the stars. You melted my heart, Xochitl whispered, her voice a caress on the breeze. Elias smiled, pulling her down for a kiss that spanned worlds, gentle, profound, eternal. And you showed me strength has room for softness. In the quiet that followed, Xochitl felt the vow dissolve, not in defeat, but in fulfillment. She was still the guardian, but now with allies, with love's unyielding fire. The world beyond the canyons carried their story forward, headlines in the New York Times of the goddess who chose unity, school programs teaching kindness as the ultimate power, hearts stirred from Seattle to Santa Fe. Xochitl's message echoed, to every soul adrift in isolation, every warrior weary of the fight, true strength blooms in vulnerability, in the selfless act that says, I see you, and together, we rise. And in the deserts of the heart, where giants and strangers meet, hope takes root, evergreen and unbreakable.